All right, so I was driving back from PetSmart where I got one fish, one sad little fish because I was bored and I had nothing else to do. And I started thinking to myself, what if I created a story in which Susie Rottencrotch, who happens to be a single mom with 5 kids, she's 25 years old, she's working the engineering field since she got out of college, but suddenly she's no longer necessary and she's laid off. And this story starts a little like this. Welcome back to America's Success Network, where we celebrate ordinary citizens who prove that financial struggle is a state of mind and not a math problem. So, in this narrative, Susie, who has to take any job because she's broke, she doesn't qualify for food stamps because she used to make too much money. She has a nice car, but she knows that she's only one payment away from having it repossessed. So she's looking through Indeed and she notices a very distinct pattern. All the jobs pay roughly $16 an hour. She's done the math. She used to make 3 times that, and suddenly she doesn't. But the world isn't done with her. The world still needs Susie to perform all of her civic duties, including a mandatory 3 hour, um, let's call it a lemonade stand behind the Taco Bell. So while she's waiting for it to get dark so she can go work the lemonade stand, she takes a job at what I happen to be right in front of a cobblestone car wash. It was right in front of me. I was talking to ChatGPT about this idea, and suddenly she finds herself wearing a uniform, a goofy hat, and a name tag. She knows that she's better than this, but at the end of the day, we have to do what we have to do in order to make money, and she can't run the lemonade stand during the light of day. Yeah, that's what we're going to call it. It's called randomizing your metaphors. I'd never done that before because I didn't think it was necessary. But when you're fighting an evil creature, you've got to fight dirty. Anyhow, this is how Susie comes in for a job interview and she meets 18-year-old Johnny Sixpack. He just dropped out of high school, and his dad asked one of his friends, who happens to be a board member for Cobblestone, and says, "Hey, my son needs a job. He's not too bright, but he's rich. I just need him to have a job." So guess what? Nepotism. So now, instead of Johnny Sixpack starting out delivering pizzas or begging for change at the corner, he's now a top level manager at this branch. He'll never amount to anything, but for now, this is where his family, his influence, his place in society has put him at the very top. He's making $150,000 a year. He doesn't, he claims to work 40 hours a week, but most of the time, when no one's looking, he goes home and plays Call of Duty. No one's going to call him out on it. Who's going to call you out when you're the friend of a board member? No one says anything, regardless of how hard your level of incompetence is. It doesn't matter. So he puts Susie Rottencrotch through an interview, realizes that she's way too smart to believe any of his gaslighting about how great this place is to work at and how her future and career is going to take off with this company. And I'm only saying this because I've heard this so many times at so many crummy jobs that I had to put this into a script because they want you to believe this. They need you to believe this. They have to get these values, the corporate values, into your melon as hard as they can. While I was working at Insight, they put me through employee retraining 3 times because they couldn't program me into reading a script every day and acting like I was happy at work. I was often told that I needed to smile more, even though I was working in a call center, which is ridiculous because all a call center is a human punching bag all day long for angry people. Anyhow, so let's get into our 3 talking points between Susie Rottencrotch after she's been hired for a position where she had to not put her education into these jobs because Susie Rottencrotch has already submitted 3,000 job applications And until recently realized that unless she took her education off, they weren't going to call her back for these types of jobs. When Amazon doesn't call you back, you know you're doing something wrong. So here we go. Talking point number one. According to management, Susie doesn't need a raise. She needs a better attitude about poverty. That's what it comes down to. When you stick your hand out, all that's going to happen is someone's going to slap your hand and say, we don't do that here. Here, we expect people to stay 3 months, maybe 6 months at the most, because you're not going anywhere here. But they can't say that to you when they hire you, that more than likely you won't make it. It's like college professors when they want to tell you that this is a hard class and most of you will not pass. The exact same thing happens in any job interview. They may sell you this amazing glimpse of this company, but that's not real. And having a better understanding about your attitude about of poverty is a clear and necessary skill because your boss doesn't care if he doesn't pay you enough to eat. Susie's well aware of the fact that she's entered a system that's predatory against poor people. Not only this job, the housing market, the lending market, everything is predatory when it comes to people that have the disease of poverty. And that's most of us who have the disease of poverty. So the job interview is a farce, to say the least. But then you get into work and you start out the first day. And what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to walk into the break room and see all the motivational posters. Smile more. You're the best. You want to be here. You have a bright future. When you're here, you're part of the family. All that propaganda in the back, or like one of my favorite ones that I've heard, stay hungry. And I just like, okay, what is this? And I remember sitting in a job interview for, what was it? I think they were selling some sort of insurance, and then they brought you into this gang interview, right? 30 people. And out of those 30 people, and they called me too, you could see that no one was buying into their toxic positivity. We started out at 30 people. By the end, I was falling asleep and I was asked to leave the interview because I wasn't paying attention. If you were there and you stayed past the 5 minute mark, you were deciding how desperate you were because this job sounded more phony than a $3 bill. But that's what you have to endure when you're out there in this current society. People who are literally trying to blow smoke up your rear tailpipe. All right, let's get into talking point number two. Stop buying things you don't need, like groceries, dental visits, kids, kids' clothes, and your own mental health. Stop buying the things you need because you can't afford them. This is what management has to tell you when you're working a lower tier job. Those things that I just mentioned, those things aren't for you working at that job. If you're working at Cobblestone, that means that you have to accept and embrace the fact that healthcare is no longer within the realm of your existence. Every low level job I've ever had throughout my entire life, especially those 20 years I spent at the university, didn't come with healthcare. They didn't come with paid overtime. They didn't come with holiday pay. They didn't come with sick time. They didn't come with any sort of retirement plan. It was just a job. And they've been working very hard to normalize that because there are companies who will tell you that the reason we can't pay you more is because we have to pay for your health insurance. And then you go and you look at what their health insurance is, and their health insurance is a scam. And every year it goes up. And you wonder, well, how can they keep selling us this? Because they have to. Just because it's unfair and the workplace seems more like a gauntlet doesn't mean that they don't have to paint it in a rosy way. They need workers and you need work. And the humiliation and the desperation of work out there is baked right into the equation. Because if your boss can tell you and look you right in the eyes and say, this isn't the kind of job for a person that needs to be making a living. Unlike our boss, Johnny Sixpack, 18 years old, he doesn't need money. He doesn't need it. He's never spent a thin dime of his own money. His parents have been making certain that he had everything he needed from the second that he was born. So his empathy towards a person that needs the basic essentials in life in order to survive is coming from a person who's been thriving his entire life. This is a person who's going to retire if he wants to, maybe in his mid 40s, maybe earlier, depending on whether or not he has a trust fund from his grandparents. But life will never get hard for this person. But on the flip side, he does have to act like a manager towards people he doesn't understand. And to him, since none of these things are applicable to him, they shouldn't be applicable to you. And that's the double standard we have in a society where policymakers and rich people have no idea what it's like to come home every day smelling like French fries, or even worse, touching your backside and wondering what happened to your soul. Because when you come home and you shut down and you wonder what happened to me, well, the 8 to 5 is very traumatic for a lot of people. You're in fear of losing your job constantly. You're in fear of looking at your bank account. You're in fear of looking into your lunchbox and saying that there's an IOU note from you 3 weeks ago, and they're saying, hey, you might think about buying something to put in here someday. And then that's it. That's the cold realization of everyday life. And what did Susie do right? She went to school, she tried, she worked her way up, she did the unpaid internships. Unfortunately, Susie Rottencrotch, while running her lemonade stand, did not understand what serving lemonade really meant. And that's why she has 5 kids. And children aren't things that you can take back, like a pet that you adopted at the pound, right? I'm not sure if I left this in the footage I put up yesterday, but for the first time, and there was a lot of firsts yesterday while I was hiking, there was a woman up there right in the middle of Pima Wash, and I saw that she was holding a leash, but I couldn't quite see what was on the other side of the leash. She had a leash with a cat on it. She took her cat hiking on a leash. Who does that? I saw it in my own 2 eyes. I'm hoping I turned the GoPro down so I could show you guys. She was kind of embarrassed about it, so the cat was hiding behind her. But I was like, what's on that leash that would be so small that could perfectly hide behind her? It was a cat. And if we're going to use that cat as a metaphor, who takes their human to a $16 an hour job? The collar might be invisible, but we're all that cat on that mountainside. Getting to our final talking point here. Johnny Sixpack reminds Susie that the key to retirement isn't wages, it's loyalty, and that working until age 87 builds character, bone density, and humility. Susie considers whether she'll live to be 87. Have many of you considered whether or not you're going to be living to 87 or 90 or 100 or maybe not even to 35? You're not even going to get to the point where you're going to get to enjoy your 50-year mortgage because $16 an hour isn't the paved road that they keep telling us to what do you call it? Real estate, what do you call it? Real estate wealth, right? When they tell you how to build wealth, poor people don't do any of the things that they tell us. And as much as Johnny Sixpack keeps telling Susie, buy stock, put 30% of your income into a savings account, and make certain that you're not wasting any money on things you don't need. Well, when you tell someone that doesn't have anything, those things, you're literally talking about ghosts and the paranormal. And home ownership for the average person right now is in that realm. The 50-year mortgage is literally telling people there's no hope while simultaneously telling them that there's hope. And that's the entire point of this video today. You have an entire class of people who keep showing up at work, telling ordinary people All these lies about how life will improve. And you just kind of blink and look at them and like, well, I'm the one that's at this job. I'm the one working at the car wash. Why would the person who's wealthy, who's maybe even possibly part owner of the business, tell you, why would they gaslight you with all these things? For one reason alone. They need you to sacrifice the most so that they can gain the most. Remember, record profits can't exist in a society without record poverty. So at the end of the day, when you show up, Susie Rottencrotch is beaten to a pulp. Her back hurts, her feet hurt, her stomach is grumbling because she couldn't afford to eat anything for lunch. And she says to her 18-year-old high school dropout manager, I can't do this anymore. And he says to her, yes, you can, because other people are doing it. Why can't you? Oh my gosh. If I had a penny for every time I've heard that, even while I was going to college and I was working full time and going to school full time, and professors would say to me, Millennial Steam, why didn't you do your homework? And that was the phrase they use. Other people are doing it. Why can't you? It would infuriate you. If you're poor, you're the villain and not the victim. You're expected to smile about it, thank your boss for it, and pretend the pain is motivation. Because they can fire a worker, but they can't fire the truth. And the truth is, most people in this country are not going to thrive, not even close. No matter how much propaganda the corporate office pushes out towards regular, ordinary workers, we know that the people making millions of dollars a year have to convince us, have to make us believe that our circumstances aren't real. They've spent years normalizing a narrative in which everyone can do it. Why can't you? It's basically the premise of the American dream that anyone from anywhere in the world can come here and suddenly be living behind 30-foot walls in a gated community in a multi-million-dollar home. It's just you're too lazy to do it. Because look at all the success stories. But we never highlight the failure because we can never point out that it isn't working. Because then you have a bad attitude. Because then you have low motivation syndrome. Because then you become a problem. Anyone who exposes the fallacy of anyone being able to make it is considered a criminal, a thought criminal. In fact, I'm going to leave you guys with this one. What do I call it? That story about that millionaire who said he was going to go from homeless to a millionaire, and what was it? Right into the challenge, he had to withdraw because of health problems. And this wasn't your ordinary from riches to millions story. This is a person who already had all the connections, who understood business. Now you put someone in with a, let's say, high school diploma, poor parents, very little understanding of money. What chance does that person have? But just because they don't have a chance doesn't mean you can't exploit the crap out of them while at the same time trying to get them to perform at the highest level, making them believe that performance equals success. And those two things will never be tied together.